The battle over how Texas determines who you get to vote for is going to the Supreme Court.
And the court said, hey, some of this stuff is unconstitutional, intentional discrimination, you got to fix some of this stuff.
How the decision in D.C. could change the way Texas draws voting districts and affect who represents you in Washington and Austin. The marquee race on the November ballot in Texas is too close to call. A new poll gives Ted Cruz just a slim lead and a sign that Beto O'Rourke's campaign strategy might be paying off.
And you can't be too Republican or too small town to have me come out and listen to you.
We'll look closer at the numbers and how independent voters could hold the key in this tightening race. Texas police withholding information from the public when a suspect dies in custody. A sneak peek of the investigative series exploring that loophole in state law and the efforts to close it. More than 2 million drivers faced over $1 billion in toll road late fees, but now they're getting a big break.
We never expected to collect the majority of this money.
How our investigation helped bring relief to Texas drivers and who's being left out of the deal. Those stories ahead on State of Texas, your in-depth look at Lone Star politics.
Hello, I'm Josh Hinkle. Thank you for joining us for State of Texas, and welcome to our new viewers this week in Abilene, Lubbock, Midland, San Angelo, Tyler, and Wichita Falls. We look forward to bringing you an in-depth look at Texas politics every week. The United States Supreme Court will take on a case from Texas next week. It's known as Abbott versus Perez, and it's about the way Texas draws voting districts. The result could change who represents you in Congress and the state legislature. Every 10 years, census population counts lead the state to redraw voting lines in Texas. Those lines usually benefit the party in power, so districts in Texas generally favor Republicans. That's perfectly legal, but what's against the law is to draw voting lines that take power away from minority voters. The last census found that most of the population growth in Texas came from Black and Hispanic residents. The case before the Supreme Court claims that the districts violate the Voting Rights Act by diluting the votes of minorities in Texas. One key example is U.S. House District 35. It stretches from North Austin south through Hayes and Caldwell counties. Then it turns into a narrow sliver just a few miles wide along I-35 before winding its way through various neighborhoods in San Antonio. The group suing the state called this an example of packing and cracking, basically drawing lines to create one district with a heavy majority of Black and Hispanic voters, in effect diminishing minority influence in other adjacent districts. A lower court ruled in their favor. The state says the maps are not discriminatory and appealed to the Supreme Court. Joining us now for perspective is State Representative Eddie Rodriguez. The Austin Democrat is policy chair for the Mexican American Legislative Caucus and one of the plaintiffs in the case before the Supreme Court. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So how did this all get started?
So this particular iteration is from the 2013 redistricting. It was actually 11, but then the court said, hey, some of this stuff is unconstitutional, intentional discrimination, you got to fix some of this stuff. And then 2013, we came back in and changed some of the things, and the court still said it was a problem. So, of course, you know, the state appealed that, and that's where we're at now at the Supreme Court.
It seems like it's taking a really long time to get this ruling. Is this atypical for Texas?
It's, you know, I've been in office 15 years, been in the Capitol for about a little over 20 years as a staffer and whatnot. It's not taken, 7 years is a really long time. If you go from 2011 to today, it's a really long time. And when you have instances where the courts have said there's intentional discrimination, or there's unconstitutional gerrymandering, if you just keep appealing and appeal it, what you have is several election cycles where you have arguably unconstitutional maps that disenfranchise minority voters. So it's a big problem. I don't remember ever seeing something, you know, go on for this long.
What happens if the court agrees with you? How will it affect Texans?
Well, no one really knows the answer to that. I know people like to have a definitive, but no one really knows. There's a very slim chance, and from my vantage point, that if they do something before June, if they rule in our favor before June, there's a chance that we would have whatever lines are from the Texas House and the congressional lines they deem as unconstitutional that needs to be changed, that we would have enough time to change. They would either mandate that the lower court, district court, change it, or in that case, the lower court could either draw the lines themselves or hand it back to the legislature to say we have to fix these, and then maybe we would have those new districts in time for the general election.
It's a tight timeline.
Very, very tight. That's why I don't think it's very likely, but I mean, in politics today, anything's possible.
What happens if they rule against you?
Well, I think it just sends a really terrible, it's a very terrible message, and it sets a bad precedence. When you have a situation where lower courts have ruled this is intentionally discriminatory, really there's just no incentive for the Republicans who are in charge here in Texas to draw lines that are favorable to minority voters, because even if they don't, obviously we'll sue, whether it's the Mexican American Legislative Caucus or the Black Caucus or whoever interested party would sue. It could take almost a decade before it might be overturned anyway, and then you've gone through an entire other census cycle, right? So there's not a lot of repercussions, negative repercussions for doing it.
Yeah, the next census cycle is less than 2 years away, and we'll be redrawing maps then. Do you think that there will be the chance for more lawsuits down the road?
You know, it seems like there's always a lawsuit when it comes to redistricting. And, you know, obviously the way you can kind of mitigate that a little bit is that when you have a little bit more parity in the legislature, when you have a roughly equal number of Democrats, Republicans, it makes it a lot easier in terms of coming to some form of agreement. But even then, that doesn't guarantee that the lawsuit won't take place. I mean, it's a political process, but what it really means is representation, which is a constitutional aspect of it. And so, if this legislature is any indication of what it might be like in 2021, I should say, then yeah, I can see more litigation, because I don't think they're going to reflect the growing number of minorities in this state.
We have just about 30 seconds left. I just want to ask you about you sponsoring the walkout at the state capitol. How did that go?
Yeah, proud to do it. It was great. To me, it's not, you know, whatever your stance is on that issue, seeing young people being engaged, I think, is a positive thing all the way around. We had some great speakers, student speakers, a lot of energy there. I trust that when session comes around next year in January, that we're going to see a lot of those young faces there too.
What kind of message does it send when state lawmakers are out there supporting young people who might not have been active in political life just yet?
I think it sends a really positive message. You had a congressman there, Lloyd Doggett was there, I was there, and there were several other council members that were there too. It tells them that we're paying attention to them and that what they say matters. Because I think a lot of times when the younger you think that, you know, the adults don't hear you. I think it becomes clearer and clearer as you have these town halls, not only around Texas, but around the country, and marches like this. You have elected officials speaking to them. It tells them that we are listening to them and we care about what they have to say. So I think it's a really important message for them.
Representative, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Conventional wisdom has the race for Senate in Texas favoring the Republican incumbent.
The good news is Texas, there are a lot more conservatives than there are liberals in Texas.
But a new poll shows the advantage may not be as big as Ted Cruz needs to hold on to his seat. We turn to our panel to take a deeper dive into the numbers and what they mean for the chances of challenger Beto O'Rourke. Plus, major relief for drivers across the state who say they've endured issues with the text tag system for too long.
They did the right thing. I appreciate them doing the right thing.
Why TxDOT is forgiving more than $1 billion in fees facing drivers. And why some people are being left out of the deal. You're watching State of Texas.
A new poll finds the marquee race in the November election in Texas is too close to call. Quinnipiac University released its latest poll in the race for U.S. Senate. Incumbent Republican Ted Cruz has the lead as expected, but the margin is surprising a lot of people. The poll shows Cruz up only 3 points over Democrat Beto O'Rourke. That's within the poll's margin of error. Another surprise, the poll found independent voters giving O'Rourke a big boost. The Democrat picked up 51% of those voters compared to 37% going for Cruz. The poll also looked at the race for governor. Right now, it's not clear which Democrat will be on the November ballot. Lupe Valdez and Andrew White face a runoff next month to determine the party's nominee. The Quinnipiac poll found either Valdez or White would be behind Governor Greg Abbott. White, the son of the late Governor Mark White, trails Abbott 48-41. And against Lupe Valdez, the former Dallas County Sheriff, Abbott is ahead by 9 points. Those are big margins, but they're smaller than many people expected. So what do these numbers really show? For perspective, we turn to our roundtable. Ed Espinosa is the executive director at Progress Texas. Brendan Steinhauser runs Steinhauser Strategies, a consulting company that works with conservative candidates. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So does this poll mean we're in for a close race?
I think so. I think it's an unpredictable year. I think there's a lot of exciting things happening on the Democratic and progressive side of the aisle. But it also shows that Texas is a growing state, a changing state, and the electorate is also growing and changing with it. So a lot of surprises. We may be in store for a lot of surprises in 2018.
What does this mean for Beto O'Rourke?
Well, I definitely think that O'Rourke has built a lot of momentum nationally. He's raising a lot of money. He's building a lot of momentum. I think a lot of folks outside the state are now starting to pay attention. I think Democrats are motivated to go and give him money and try and support him. I think he's going to make a case to the Democrats in Washington that he can win Texas. I personally think Cruz will win in the end. I think Cruz has a little bit bigger lead than maybe this poll suggests. But I think that certainly Cruz is not going to take this challenge lightly.
Yeah, what are some of the challenges that Cruz might face?
Well, I think the one challenge that he has that is very unique to him is that he is personally not that likable. His approval ratings have never been that high. Now, his policies and his politics may be something that bring people around to him, but otherwise, he just really isn't that likable. And he's been wishy-washy on whether or not he's with Trump or against Trump. It's been a very conflicted relationship over the years. So I think that that's going to be something that plays against him. And then there's, again, the growing electorate, I don't think, is one that is necessarily inclined to support a candidate like Ted Cruz.
Now, on the statewide front, it seems like Governor Abbott is a slam dunk for re-election, but this poll kind of puts Democrats closer than many people thought.
Yeah, I think that this poll does show that things are probably a little more close than they were certainly in 2014 when Governor Abbott won by 25 points over Wendy Davis. I think the Abbott camp and all Republicans are taking this challenge seriously. I think they feel like they'll still win and probably still win a little bit bigger margin maybe than this poll shows. The poll did poll registered voters, not just likely voters, so yeah. I do think it'll skew a little bit more favorable toward the Democrat just based on history. But in 2018, we are seeing a lot of enthusiasm and energy from the left. Democrats had a historic primary election campaign and are still going through that runoff system now. So I think Republicans are certainly taking this very seriously. At the end of the day, I do think Republicans feel confident that Governor Abbott will win re-election.
Earlier in the program, we talked about the redistricting case before the Supreme Court. You know, obviously you guys come at this from different political perspectives. In your opinion, what is so important about this case?
So the big thing about this case, which by the way has been going through the courts for about 7 years now, and a number of courts at a number of levels have ruled these redistricting maps to be intentionally discriminatory. Those aren't my words, those are the words of the courts. So these are the problems with the maps, is they're drawn so that politicians can pick their voters instead of the other way around. And there are a lot of districts that really seem to stifle the voices of communities of color. That's the problem with these districts. Now, these districts, even though they're drawn 7 years ago, are not as locksteady as they were when they were initially drawn because populations have changed and movement has happened amongst the communities. So we'll see what the courts decide they look like now versus what they looked like 7 years ago. But so far, all the rulings have been against these maps.
And your thoughts?
Well, I think unfortunately gerrymandering has been a product of the American political system for a long time. I think it's pretty clear that the intention is political more than anything else. It's to take advantage of the system as it is, to try and get your party to have the most representatives in Congress. When the Democrats were in charge in Texas for decades, they did the same thing. Republicans then, of course, took charge and reversed that. So I think they would argue that this is not something based on racial discrimination, but rather a political end being sought, which is more representation in Congress. And, you know, looking ahead to the 2020 elections, that's going to be a huge election because we'll have redistricting once again.
Brendan, Ed, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Families wanting answers after their loved ones die in police custody. We take a look at the law letting police withhold information in those cases. And Texas drivers get a big break from the state. TxDOT waives late fees for millions, facing over $1 billion in fines.
Before it was never about collecting money, it was trying to encourage people to do the right thing.
But the people who did the right thing and paid up are left out of the deal. Why? We'll take a closer look at TxDOT's toll fee decision next on State of Texas.
Major relief for drivers across Texas who say they've endured issues with the text tag system for too long. After hundreds of complaints to our investigative team and a nearly year-long investigation, the Texas Department of Transportation is now waiving more than $1 billion of debt. 2.2 million accounts were sent to collections last year alone. Investigator Brittany Glass joins us to explain the developments at the state capitol.
Josh, we told you last month about the implementation of Senate Bill 312, which limits the fees TxTag can charge for delinquent toll users. That followed our months-long investigation into sky-high bills. Now, TxDOT has decided the law marks a new day in the TxTag system.
The decision has been made. We're only moving forward with the current one in compliance with Senate Bill 312. So all of the earlier late fees are no longer being pursued.
TxDOT will waive all late fees accrued before March 1st. That's a total of $1.3 billion that won't be collected from drivers in all. But Representative Joe Pickett told us TxDOT didn't implement the legislation for Texans with exorbitant bills soon enough.
They had time. It was a year ago since we've been in session. They knew that that was coming. They knew about the problems with the collection agencies. I think they could have just done it all at one time.
Check your statements. The waived late fees were charged between the year 2007 and March 1st of this year. Anything after that, though, is fair game for late fees up to that cap we mentioned of $48 per year. No refunds for customers who paid collections and late fees before March 1st. TxDOT says they very much appreciate drivers who paid their tolls and their late fees. Josh?
Thanks, Brittany. We wanted to know how TxDOT plans to tell more than 2 million drivers that their fees had been waived. And we also wanted to find out why the agency says it will not refund the people who've already paid up. Phil Prazen went looking for answers.
Living in Round Rock, Thomas Hunt takes SH 130 toll 2 or 3 times a week. But back in the summer of 2016, he says TxDOT didn't send him bills for 2 months, putting him behind. When bills finally came in August, they wanted more than $10,000 in total.
And I went down to pay, and they said, well, you knew you took the toll. You should have just paid the bill. I said, I didn't get a bill. They said, that's not our fault.
He hasn't paid the fees since.
They said, you have to pay it all. So I left.
Now, his late fees, like more than 2 million others, have been waived. You won't get a separate notification from TxDOT. A spokesperson says customers will receive a message at the top of their next statement saying fees are dismissed. But if you did pay your fees before March 1st, you will not get a refund. TxDOT has issued refunds before, like they did last year for more than 12,000 people after billing mistakes and overpayments.
But there's still...
Lawmakers, however, say it would be too hectic to decide how far back to refund this time. Customers like Thomas will continue to pay the tolls they owe, just not the extra late fees. And he's fine with that.
I mean, I don't think anybody has a problem paying the tolls. But when it's $20 every booth you go through because they didn't bill you, that's ridiculous.
Texas lawmakers tell me today that this cures the symptom, but not the underlying problem. There's still confusion with pay-by-mail customers going from toll road to toll road without purchasing a TxTag. So next session, they're going to look into whether Texas needs one unifying system of toll roads. For State of Texas, I'm Phil Prazen.
Thanks, Phil. Our investigators will be at this week's Texas Transportation Committee meeting, pushing for more answers. These latest developments are a direct result of our team's investigation. It started last year when we discovered 2.2 million accounts sent to an aggressive collections agency in just a matter of months. After our reports, TxDOT cut ties with that collection agency. Some customers got refunds or had their fines reduced or even eliminated after we took hundreds of bills from viewers to TxDOT for help. TxDOT also consolidated its customer service and billing entities to help avoid customer frustration. And starting on March 1st of this year, TxDOT began putting caps on late fees to avoid future sky-high bills. And this could lead to action at the legislature. House Speaker Joe Straus directed lawmakers to study this issue before the next legislative session to draft bills to further address the problem. And both the governor and lieutenant governor have called for no more toll roads in Texas. That's forcing TxDOT to revamp their future transportation plans across the state. Texas police denying information when a suspect dies in their custody. We investigate the law, letting them make that choice. This weekend, we launch a digital investigative series called Denied, about a state law that gives police discretion to deny evidence when a suspect dies in their custody. For decades, they've used the measure to withhold records from families, journalists, and lawyers, and critics say it could be used to cover up misconduct or excessive force. Now, legislative efforts underway to close this loophole, and we're giving you a first look.
You're gonna shoot me if I don't stop? Yes. Is that what cops do? Stop!
We're mostly just angry and want answers.
There was no reason for him to die. What happened to serve and protect? I thought a parent would have a right to records to see what the truth was.
Law enforcement agencies withhold information that they know would be damaging.
It's all captured on video.
Let the public see what went on.
I represent my deceased son. No family should have to go through not knowing the details of how their child has passed.
Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. Make sure to catch us next week at this same time for your in-depth look at Texas politics.